Good morning, everyone. Well, I am Afroza from Bangladesh. Today, my student Sadia, Afrin, and I together would be presenting our topic, which is on alternative assessments. Specifically, the title of our topic is Use of Alternative Assessments in Online Classes and Instant Reflections of My Teaching. We are very happy to be a part of this Adult Teacher Journey 2020, and we are grateful to the authority for giving us this opportunity to share our ideas, our experiences with all of you. Well, we both belong to Daffodil International University, which is a private university in Dhaka, Bangladesh. And my student, Sadia Afrin, also belongs to the Department of English. As you can see, that our topic is focusing on alternative assessments. Well, today we would be sharing two specific types of alternative assessments. The first one is providing instant feedback for learner training through using individual assessment cards. And the second type of alternative assessment is using progressive I can statements, which actually can promote learner confidence, specifically in writing. So today, our presentation would be focusing on these two specific types of alternative assessments. Now, let us start with the first one, which is instant feedback for learner training. And this actually is done through individual assessment cards. Now, what is this individual assessment card? Well, the idea is obviously very interesting. The idea comes from Clive Lovelock, who is a Japanese English teacher, and the process was developed in 1996. And the purpose of this process of assessment was to make students learn basic communication skills and also develop their learning skills. So this is how the idea comes. Now, if we get into deeper, there are some guiding principles of using this individual assessment cards. Now, what are they? Well, obviously, we may start with obtaining, storing, retrieving, and using the language. And then we can include active involvement in the entire learning process, which also includes consciousness raising among the learners. And finally, social strategies and communication strategies, both these are also included as guiding principles when we think of using individual assessment cards. Now, let me show you the sample of Lovelock's assessment card. This is the sample. Actually, the card has writing on both these sides. As you can see, these two are the two sides of one particular assessment card. And it has each and every details, as you can see. It has the student's name, number means ID, their class, their attendance, month, day record, their absences, their scores, their assignments, date, and score comments. While on the other part of the card, you can also see that there are the number of classes, which is very, very important, which also has, a similarity in the number of classes that we actually have in a semester. Well, here, as you can see, that there are 24 classes in total. And we also in our university conduct around 23, 24 classes in each semester. So, well, apart from that, you may also see that the most important thing, one of the most important things in this assessment card is the usage of all these keys. And what are these keys? They actually has only one letters, but the explanation actually has been provided beside the letters. For example, E stands for speaking in English. As Lovelock was a Japanese teacher, so E refers to speaking in English, not Japanese, for conversation in classes. So if a student is speaking in English during the entire lesson, he or she may give himself or herself 10 out of 10 in E. Speaking in English, point this criteria. Will C stands for communication in English. If he or she is communicating in English entirely throughout the lesson, not only with his or her friends, but also with the teacher, then obviously he or she can give himself or herself 10 out of 10. Now, there are certain criteria. There is Q, A, L, P, H, and then I. So these are some very, very interesting points which a student is actually going through before the classes. Obviously, he or she should have the card in front of him or her before the class. He or she should go through all these strategies before the class so that he or she is able to give himself or herself the scores according to his or her own measurement. So that's why the card is so interesting and very, very important. Now, about the procedure, well, of course, as I have mentioned at the very beginning, they should go through all these strategies listed on the card. So the strategies should be familiar actually before the lesson, before the class. Now, the second stage will, as we know that each and every class activity has a particular amount of time. In my case, it doesn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes. So it's an easy way actually to collect points. For example, after each of the activities, students are going to collect some points. They are giving themselves some points. So after 2 or 3 activities, they are actually giving 2 or 3 points. And also there is, focus on negative reinforcement. Minus points can be used, but well, of course, it's advisable to do so sparingly. And finally, well, obviously, it's important to set a maximum score based on the card. So, well, each and every student has that thing in his or her mind that, well, I'll have to score maximum. Now, this is an example task using this assessment card. This was a pair of work which I provided regarding a particular activity or lesson through assessment cards. And I had actually customized my assessment card according to the level and requirement of my students and according to, obviously, the lesson. According to the lesson, it has been customized. And as you can see, there are some keys. But I have changed some of the expressions which the students are going to use during the entire lesson. For example, the English they can use during the lesson may include, for example, how do you say blah 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 in English or something like that, and then how do you pronounce this, or what does this or that mean, or I'm sorry, I don't understand, or I don't know. So these are some common expressions which I have included for them, actually to help them to continue the communication in English regarding that lesson. Well, that was all from, assessment card, because, well, obviously it reveals that each and every teacher can customize this assessment card according to his or her level of students, according to the level, according to the requirements of the students, and obviously according to the lesson plans, of course. Now, the second alternative assessment, which I'm going to talk about, is using progressive I can statements, which is definitely very, very important to promote learner confidence, specifically in writing. Now, where does this strategy comes from? Well, this strategy has also been developed by Fife McDuff, Khadija Al-Haiki, and Caroline Lindsay to build students' confidence, specifically in their ability to write in English. So writing was their main focus where, through using this I can type of statement, they were able to build confidence. Well, one way to address this issue is by creating opportunities for students to state where they perceive they are able to do, which will generally can be referred to as I can statements. For example, well, after completing a particular lesson, student can say that, well, now I can write about daily activities in English. For example, after completing a paragraph class, a student can say that now I can write a topic sentence of a paragraph, something like this. Well, now let us discuss how does it work, or how can it work. Well, teachers can present single I can statement associated with a task and have students write or say the statement when they complete that task. But this is a very usual and general thing. Well, I can give an I can statement to my student, which is associated with the task which I am also giving them for a lesson. And after completing the task, they are simply saying that now I can do this or that. Well, they're actually saying the same thing after completing a lesson. This is a very general and usual thing. Now, the other option is actually a teacher can present a list of I can statements, which the students can copy, check, and read out loud as they progress, okay, throughout an activity. So this is another option through which it can work. Well, the other option is that teacher can also present different types of I can statements in scrambled order, and a lot of I can statements in scrambled order, and he or she can actually ask the students to number these statements according to their level of learning. For example, I may give them 5 I can statements for a particular lesson. Now, after completing that lesson or task or activity, a student may say that, well, ma'am, well, number 4 is number 1 for me because I can now do this or that. And after that, number 1 comes. So my list actually doesn't match with your list. So I'm listing it, I'm numbering it according to my level of understanding. So this is another interesting way to work with this strategy. Well, for advanced level of learners, obviously, a teacher may not offer any I can statements. So this also works for advanced level of learners. Well, instead of that, the teacher may ask the students to come up with their own I can statements after completing a particular task or activity. So that's also interesting. Well, another alternative is also to present I can statements as I will statements before starting an activity. So we can replace I can statements with I will statements sometimes before starting the activity. For example, we have some specific objectives, and before entering to the lesson, will students can be offered I will statements. Now, this is also an example activity which I shared with my students, and this was about reading comprehension. So I asked them to go through a comprehension. The passage was about Athens and Sparta, and the basic question over there was, where would you rather live and why? That was the common question from the passage, but it had specifically 2 questions. Well, 2 tasks actually, not questions. After reading the handout, they were asked to write an argumentative essay, and they were supposed to assess their writing with the help of certain I can statements. So these 2 actually were this specific task regarding that particular comprehension or passage. And these were the objectives, of course. Well, we may start with that you introducing precise claims and distinguishing claims, and also creating organization. This was one of the major objectives, learning objectives. And after that, obviously developing claims and counterclaims, which is also very, very important. And enough and proper evidence should be there for the claims and counterclaims. Now, at the 3rd stage, well, our 3rd objective included using words, phrases, or clauses to link the major sections of the text. Well, obviously, it had connection with creating cohesion. And then the other objective also included establishing and maintaining a formal style and objective tone while writing. And finally, also it included that they'll have to come up with a concluding section or statement, but that should support the argument. So these were the specific learning objectives and which they were supposed to, come up with at the end of the lesson. Well, there were three levels, and I have clearly mentioned the levels with I can statements. I have provided them the I can statements at different levels. For example, at the very first level, well, a student should say that I can identify an argument to support a claim, and also I can identify claims from a given text. At the second level, a student should say that I can choose an argument to support a claim, and also I can choose claims from a given text. And finally, at the level 3, a student should say that now I can write an argument to support a claim, and I can support claims from a text with reasons and enough evidence. So this, through these 3 levels, actually, the strategy was supposed to work. Now, my student, Sadia Afrin, is going to share her experiences regarding this I can statement, which actually helped her to identify some specific objectives, to get something from a particular lesson, and she's going to share how this helped her to actually understand some specific objectives regarding a particular lesson. Sadia Afrin, please continue.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I'm going to demonstrate 3 different types of I can statement which I have learned from one particular lesson, verbals. Firstly, I'd like to say that now I can demonstrate between finite and non-finite verbs. Here, finite verbs change their forms when there is a change in the numbers or person of the subject. It has different forms in different tenses. For example, my little brother wants to be an actor. I could not solve the problem. On the other hand, non-finite verbs do not change their forms when the number or person of the subject changes. There are mainly 3 types of non-finite verbs. They are infinitives, gerund, and participle. For example, she worked hard to pass the test. To err is human. I can differentiate between finite, infinitive, and bare infinitive forms. The infinitive form is used to describe action of a non-finite duration, possibly with the word to attached to it. For example, to go, to play, to study, etc. The bare infinitive form of a verb is the same as the infinitive form, only without the same word to. In some exceptional cases, the infinitive is used without to. For example, let him go. She made me cry. Lastly, I can use ing as both gerund and present participle in sentences. We know present participle is verb plus ing. Gerund is also verb plus ing. But the difference is when it is used as noun, verb, adjective, and adverb, then it is gerund. Whereas when it is used as progressive tense of verb, it is considered as a participle. For example, stray dogs are barking tonight and the Roland boy is lighting firecrackers. Here it is progressive tense. She is angry about having been criticized. Here it is gerund. This is how I can statement helped me to achieve the objective of a lesson. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sadia, for sharing your ideas, your experiences. And well, it's glad to know that it helped you. Well, apart from this, using these strategies, using these types of alternative assessments, well, how actually we are going to share our experiences? Well, how as teachers and students, we would know that, well, this particular strategy is helping me this way, or my students are getting benefited from a particular strategy or not. Well, for this, As blended learning platform, one of the most interesting tools or platforms that I could think of is use of Moodle. Well, in my university, well, Moodle has been one of the most engaging teaching learning platforms since 2012. Well, we have been using this Moodle for quite a long time, and well, we found that sharing experiences on several platforms over here, on several segments over here on Moodle, can be very interesting. For example, if we can share our experiences on discussion forums on Moodle, well, that would definitely help us, that may definitely help us to identify each other's problems. That would definitely help us to get into deeper. That would definitely help us to come up with new ideas. And obviously, there are always scopes to, well, there are obviously scopes to improve. So if something is not working well, or if a student is having problems in terms of getting into something, well, obviously this platform may work as one of the most engaging platforms where we may help each other to grow. Now, what about my reflections of teaching? What is my role as a teacher here? I mean, in terms of using all these alternative assessments? Well, obviously, I have several roles as a teacher, and it includes, as you can see, so many things. Well, I actually am the controller, I am the organizer, I am also a participant in the entire process. I participate with my students. I'm also an assessor. I am also a prompter. I work as a resource, obviously, to my students, for my students. I'm a tutor. I am also a very good, a very keen, a very close observer. So the role of a teacher actually is multi-purposes. A teacher will is working, a teacher may work in different ways, but whatever he or she does, well, if a teacher is not keeping the record, if a teacher is not maintaining that record, I mean the record of students' performances, then he or she will obviously is not going to be benefited, because well, when we think about reflections, when we talk about feedback, then obviously as a teacher, I also need feedback from my students. I also need to have some reflections, and these alternative assessments may work as very good reflections, instant reflections after completing a particular class or lesson. So that was all from our side, and these are our email addresses. I am Afroza Akhter, and my email address is here beside my name. And my student Sadia Afrin can be reached through this email address. Well, that was all from our part. And once again, I thank the Adult Teacher Journey 2020 Authority for providing us with this wonderful opportunity to share our experiences from Bangladesh. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sadia. Thank you, everyone.